welcome to a special St. Patrick's Day edition of Writers Drinking Whiskey Open Bar. Woohoo! Yes, we will be delving into Irish wit and wisdom and the drinks, the sauce, as we usually do around here. So make a quick announcement for anyone tuning in here is anyone that participates in the chat, and I made a comment in the chat, but anyone participating, feel free, jump on there, make a snide comment, troll me, ask questions, whatever you like, and we will send you a free ebook. So just go on, do whatever you like, but email me at the email I put on there, and I'll get you a free ebook out for participating in our celebration here. So let's get to it, though. As custom around here, I like to do something fun for introduction. So I have everyone's bio in the description. So if anyone wants to learn more about the fine folks with us, and we are waiting for, I know Gilstrap is listed on the screen here. We are waiting for John. If he jumps on, we'll have him on. But in the meantime, what I want to do to get us started here is have you, so I'll introduce all of you because I like to have a special moniker for these events because I have time on my hands, and I just think I spend too much of it on this show apparently. But have you ever tried to write while drinking, while partaking in the waters of life? And if so, how did that go? And let's start with Dario Ceriello, the editor who drove all the comma splices from Ireland.
And it worked. There aren't any there.
Very good.
Well, what was the question?
Do you ever?
Have I ever written drunk? I've often had a small glass of wine or a cocktail while working, but rarely more. I'm a pretty cheap date, and I have no confidence in writing when doing any more than just having a nip.
Sure. No. Fair enough. Let's transition over then to Austin Camacho. You'll find him at the end of every rainbow because you're a treasure, sir. If that wasn't clear, it's because you're a treasure,
More pot than gold, I think. But, at least in my house.
Sure.
As best I can remember, I have never even tried to write while I was drunk. It's one of those few things that I do. I get very serious when I'm writing. I'm very straight, so afraid not.
Okay, very good. And then Jesse Darnay, the man whose prose paints the river green with envy. Because Chicago, that might be a question later because I have a special trivia portion, but Chicago likes to paint their rivers green for St. I lost my voice for St. Patty's Day.
I'm exactly like Austin. I'm very serious when it comes to writing. No drinking, sometimes not even coffee, just tea. But I'm actually curious. I wonder, was it Hemingway who talked about writing drunk and editing sober?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that. I want to try it. I want to try sitting down, completely wasted, working on one of the projects I'm working on.
Sure.
And just kind of sectioning it off. And then the next day going back completely sober and doing edits and see if there's really something to it. I really am curious about it.
Right.
Because maybe you're so uninhibited when you're drunk, but you don't have that analytical editorial mindset.
Right.
So you're pumping out really powerful, great stuff.
Right.
But it's just very sloppy. So then if you go back and edit,
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just gibberish.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. It's just I talk about that sometimes on the show. To be a question I ask is why is there's that relation with writers and drinking, and I think sometimes it is exactly that, is you needing to break off those inhibitions a little and having a few drinks, right? Or marijuana. You hear your writers a lot nowadays that is legal lots of places. Doing you hear more. But I tried once, very the exact way you just said. It was pretty pretty buzzed to drunk, and I'm like, I'm gonna write this, and I swear it was like the greatest thing I'd ever written. I'm like, this is like a masterpiece. I have solved, like, I think I solved world hunger at the time, like, you know, cured some viruses, like, and the next day when I went to edit it sober, I was like, this is garbage. I can't do anything with this. That went to the trash can. So I'll have, you know, I mean, I think you could have a drink and be fine. I think if you come to it and you're too uninhibited, right? Like there can be too uninhibited. There's like, oh, I'm having a good time. I've had a few drinks. I'm loosened up and we're joking. And then there's the, I'm going streaking. You don't want to be writing at the going streaking hour. That's not the best. Awesome. So thanks for that.
That answers that then.
All right. So what I was going to do for today, so I went through and found a bunch of clips from different Irish writers, like Joyce and Oscar Wilde. Brendan Behan is up on my screen at the moment, and just got theirs. And I tried to group some of them so we could talk about them together, just to get a few more in here. Some of them are pretty, as you would imagine with our Irish writer friends, some of them are pretty witty and things. So we can just debate their merits, have some fun with it. You know, anyone in the chat, whatever you think, feel free to pop on, you know, is there as well. So I'll start with Brendan, and I might be butchering the name. Is that correct? Does anyone know? Is it Behan or is it's Behan? Behan. Okay. So Brendan Behan. So writer's block is just permission to drink whiskey at noon. The words will return when they're good and ready. So it's an excuse for day drinking. Oscar Wilde had one is, I drink to make my writing more sparkly. Well, he said sparkling. I kind of like sparkly, to be honest. But what is the touch of whiskey if not distilled into a muse? And then Frank McCord also had one that is, the only thing better than a story is a story with whiskey. It loosens the tongue and tightens the tale. Yep, and that was the three I had for this. So anyone that wants to jump in and to debate the merits of...
Well, I did find another good quote by Brendan Behan, who said, "I'm a drinker with a writing problem."
I like that.
That's an awesome one. That fits in right there. That one didn't pop up for me, but that's funny. I have to call malarkey on it though, because, and excuse my Gaelic, you know, but I have to call malarkey on it because, like, you really don't need an excuse to day drink. Like, if you're a writer, that is your excuse to day drink, you know.
Or night drink, or, you know, afternoon drink. If you're a writer.
Right, exactly. The morning drink, it's all fine. This is part of the thing. I do wonder though. So to get to the because and that particular quote, right? He's talking about writer's block, and we had an episode where we talked ad nauseum about writer's block. So not to like go completely into it, but is there but to touch on it, right? So we don't have to dive like an hour into the topic, but like writer's block, right? Like anyone, like, you know, a touch of whiskey, just a long walk. Is there, and I'm saying like milder stuff, right? Because there's certainly times where, you know, you've had some traumatic experience or something's come up, right? And you're just not writing because writing's not the thing. Life is more important at the time. Or those severe blocks where people can't write for a while. But you're kind of stumped, or you're kind of in a hole or some sort. What do you guys do?
I don't actually, I have not had that experience of writer's block. I usually have too much. I usually have more stuff going on in my head than I can't write that fast. Mm-hmm. But I think that at least for me, drinking would have the opposite effect, because when I've had a drink or two, then, you know, it's squirrel. You know, anything can take my attention away.
Yeah, that's funny.
I, you know, when I'm writing, I have to have tunnel vision, or else, you know, I can find an excuse for literally anything.
Well, maybe that's why it works for me, like, you know, 25% of the time, or whatever amount of Irish I am, you know. That's funny though. I'm like that all books. I'm forgetting Catherine Reichs, I think, is the name of the writer of the books, but they started doing all these crossover episodes on like network TV, right? Mm-hmm. And so suddenly these characters come in from this show called Sleepy Hollow, which is like Ichabod Crane, the legend of the Headless Man, and like tonally the show is like 180 degrees different, right? And so they come in and it looks like this like ungodly mashup of shows. And I was so hooked. I was like, we have to find the Sleepy Hollow episode now and watch that. Like, that's all I've ever wanted, is to watch the show. And that was my squirrel for the night. And, you know, God bless her. She I think she looked at her phone while I turned that episode on. And the Bones cast does make their little appearance over there. And it's equally, like, nonsensical. But
Wow.
Dario, Jesse, you guys have any it doesn't have to be drinking, anything you guys do to kind of break out of those many slumps?
This is like a super relevant question for me now, because my wife and I had a baby 3 weeks ago, and it has completely upended my life and my schedule and my writing schedule. And with the newborn, it's like you're constantly having to tend to every single little whim, unless of course it's like you with your wife, William, where you're completely shielded from all that.
That was a pre-show question, Jesse. I'm not supposed to bring that in. Now everyone's going to know how dastardly I was and not.
Inside joke. But so like I'm still trying to write where I can, but I find that because of like all the stress of the situation, that for me creates writer's block. It makes it hard. Like,
Sure.
I'm so stressed I can't, like, I have to kind of like ease into. I have to feel like almost like physically relaxed in a little bit of way, in a way to ease into the writing. So I've done things like not drinking, but just taking long walks, meditation, yoga, stuff like that. That really, I don't know, kind of just makes me feel very, very relaxed. And like the more relaxed I can feel in this super stressful situation, the more I can open up and start writing. So I think for me, it's like stress and writer's block, or stress causes writer's block for me. But I haven't tried the Irish way of combating it yet.
The waters of life, buddy. The waters of life.
The waters of life. I think that is like the big question, for this discussion, which is, is there really something to like drinking and writing? What is that relationship?
Right. And you got on the chat here, because I know I try to keep an eye on it while everyone's talking and not and it can be a juggling act. So I'll bring everyone in here. But Pepper Willis says hello to Dario, and also Jesse, congratulations, and you forgot to take paternity leave. So
say what?
She said you forgot to take paternity leave, so you need to
No, I'm on leave. I have a month.
Oh, okay, very good. Then you remembered.
Still,
very good. Good for you.
Yeah.
It's a big change. Yeah. My wife joked about, or we not even joked, but we've talked about it. Is the biggest change is 0 to 1, certainly. 1 to 2 is the next, but once you're kind of 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, and I can only speak to there because we have the 4. It's not like they start. Actually, we watched 7 kids for Valentine's Day. And so we watched my 2 nieces. We watched our granddaughter, our grandson, our nephew. Also niece and nephew. Yeah. So we had 7 of them here, and then 4 of them spent the night. But actually, we thought like, oh man, like we're trying this out, but maybe we bit off more than we could chew. And actually, they do start to form their own ecosystem. You know what I mean? Like they just start to kind of do their thing. Yeah. So they're like. Yeah, there's like, we're playing and doing this, and you're like, okay, actually, this wasn't too hard. You just feed them. They come to you when they want food or water. You're like, man, this is awesome. Like, you're entertaining yourself. This is all I've ever wanted,
I need like an advent calendar to just count the years until that happens.
So shoot for 4 is what I'm saying. I'm trying to make sure that's the magic number.
Right.
The magic, yeah.
I'll feel better in 4 years.
Very good. No, I mean 4 kids, not 4 years. So this is the number of children.
Shoot
for
4 kids? No. I thought you meant a certain age they can start to like.
No.
That's not the answer. That's
keep
not
the
the
one
answer.
you've got. You can borrow 3 other kids at any given time. People are it's very easy. Here, can I take care of your kid for a couple hours? Here. That's not an issue.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah,
stranger,
people will happily give you their kids. Yeah. Very good. Awesome. What about you, Dario? What do you do to break out of a mini slump? And have you ever tried the sauces?
I think the balance of a lot of things in life actually kind of runs between the Italian and the Irish way. And of course, being genetically Italian, I'm going to say that.
Right,
And
right.
so it's really to do with the espresso alcohol balance.
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep, in fact, after lunch in Italy, and my grandmother's, one of my grandmothers used to have this virtually until the day she died. After lunch, you have an espresso corretto, which is an espresso with a shot of grappa in it. And so I think that would offset the deleterious effects of alcohol upon the actual writing, and the caffeine would break the block. So that might be the ticket there.
Right, right. Amen. That's funny because
I like it.
Yeah, yeah, and we've talked about this, Dario, because my dad's half Italian. So my grandmother, and actually that's what we wanted to look into getting you can get citizenship in Italy if you can came as babies. That's the part we are always kind of forgetting, and so we were trying to trace it back. But so that's what I do, is it's like espresso like in the morning and like kind of all day, and then you transition over to the hard liquor. So it's like my Italian side kind of dominates the morning. In mid-afternoon, the Scottish-Irish side starts wiggling its way in, and at some point there's some other like muddy sides, I guess. I always forget all the little like half percentage things I am, but they wiggle their way in apparently sometimes. Very good. So, any final thoughts on this before we move on to more Irish wit and wisdom?
Yes, thank you, Dario. I feel like again I'm setting out with this question: like, is there something to drinking and writing? And now we've added, if you mix it with caffeine, that might be the balance. So I thank you for bringing in that new element. I appreciate it. The answer is evolving.
Sure. Well, I think there's a real truth in the fact that you need something to get out of your headspace sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like I can feel that. Like I'm usually pretty good. I'm not like I'm one of those annoying writers that doesn't think writer's block is a real thing. I think you can have a real human issue, and I don't think that's writer's block. I think that's go deal with your life,
Situational.
Yeah, and otherwise, I think most of it is just you gotta there's routine, but also sometimes breaking the routine. So sometimes I almost always write every morning. Sometimes I'll take something, I'll go pick my son up early, and I'll go sit in the car for an hour and write stuff on my phone just to break the mental waves. So I think sometimes the getting out of your head, whatever that is, that's coffee, that's liquor, that's marijuana, whatever substances you're talking. Not that I'm going to promote black tar heroin or the Finney. I would stay off the Finney. Kids, don't take the Finney. Whatever you do, never do the Finney. But black tar also sounds fairly bad, so maybe you skip those two. But sometimes, whatever it takes, even like a hard workout. I actually really love working out middle of the day really hard, and I just feel like it erases your thoughts, the pain and the endorphins and everything you get. I think that's a great way sometimes to break out of a little rut, is just go get the body exercising and the blood flowing. So
walking is always good.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Austin, I interrupted you, I think.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
Well, what were you saying, Austin? Go ahead.
No, what I was about to say was the workout takes your brain down to zero.
Right.
It clears everything out. It's all about what you're doing physically.
Right.
And it gives your brain a chance to clear the clutter and start over. So I'm with you on that one.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's move on to the next one here. So Anne, this seems like an easy name. I feel like I'm going to butcher it. Enright? E-N-R-I-E-N, right? Is Onright or something, right? I think I'm saying it's not Enright, like it's Onright. I think she's alive now. Sorry, Anne. This is just how the mouth works. And I actually really love this piece of writing. So she wrote The Gathering, which won the Man Booker 2007. And amongst other things, but she says, first things first, you must write badly. To create anything worthwhile, you have to be willing to make an absolute idiot of yourself on the page. And then just a couple that kind of go along with that was just Samuel Beckett. Write like you're already dead. It's the only way to be fearless with your truth. which I loved, which is not, I grouped these very loosely just so we could kind of have a pretty open-ended conversation here. And then getting to our best friend here, James Joyce. And I know you love him, Jesse, but Finnegan's Wake is just, I curse him. I curse him for Finnegan's.
He got more and more crazy as
But James Joyce, mistakes are the portals of discovery. The imperfect is our paradise, which is actually a really lovely quote. But Finnegan's Wake is just an epic troll on mankind that persists to this day. So, anyone, and anything that touches you, anyone who wants to jump in on any of those three quotes?
I'm attracted to the idea, write like you're already dead.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
that's a great one.
Yeah, and no one is going to be able to come face to face with me and criticize this. So let me just throw down, because that's my process is that until I finish the first draft, I do not look back.
Sure.
I just charge forward, and I know as I'm doing it, half of this is crap, but it's about the story. It's not about the word craft at this point.
Right. Sure.
So you just charge on in there, and maybe there's some truth to that other one too, that you really have to write some crap. One of my early teachers told me that when you're writing your first draft, think about it as you're just pouring the sand into the sandbox. You'll go back and build the sandcastle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love that, because actually I say sometimes that I think of it like sculpting, and that first part is just getting your materials. I need the clay, I need whatever, the marble, whatever you're working with. You need that first part. Without the materials, you can't sculpt anything. So I love that, the sand aspect of it. So Jesse, Dario, you guys want to chime in?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm always trying to work on, and I think getting better at is. When I first started writing, I was very obsessed with each word, each line. It took me forever to finish a scene, but I think as I continue to go forward, I'm becoming more comfortable just allowing myself to just write whatever, like write crap, and knowing that I can come back and kind of mold and sculpt. But it's always, I think, because my instinct is to be poetic naturally, and so I'm very interested in like each word, each sentence. But when I'm writing fiction, certainly that doesn't necessarily serve me well. So I think those are great pieces of advice, actually.
Right. Yeah. Well, I heard a poet
that years ago.
Sure. Well, I forget who the poet was, but she said it takes her like 5 years to complete a poem, and it was kind of that because every word.
Yeah, exactly.
And so but still, there's a lot of coming back to it, right? So I can feel you. Dario, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I totally agree with the idea that you've got to write a ton of crap first. And unfortunately, because of my MO, I mean, I wish I could just get that first draft out without ever looking back. As you know, I can't.
I wish just as much as you, if not more, that you would just get that crap out and get to the next book.
Yeah,
I'm working on it. But I can still hold to that dictum, because what I've done is I've written a lot of very polished crap in the process of getting to the place where I can write polished, decent stuff.
Sure.
But that's that old saying, isn't it? It takes you a million words to learn.
Yes.
Right.
And or several novels that remain in your drawer, and I think that's true. You've got to get through the crap. Now, whether it's in the shape of very vomited out drafts or very polished drafts that are actual shit, no matter how well you polish them.
Sure. Well, so let's come back to that. I think that's a really interesting question, because how do you know, right? Like you know what I mean? Like sometimes you write something and there can be insecurities and stuff. It could be great, right? Sometimes it's like, who's to say, like, if you just wrote real polished crap, or it was actually something that'd be really meaningful for someone. But I wanted to
So
come
what
back to
makes you think
because
it's polished?
yeah,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I think it's a
I'm
valid
curious,
question.
what for you, Dario? Like, what if you spent a lot of? And I'm asking because it's kind of personal for me because I do tend to be polish even things that I don't end up sending out or whatever. Like, so how do you, if you create something and you really polish something, how do you and you decide this is crap? How do you decide that? Like, what influences that decision? I guess is my question.
Oh, in the cold light of the next day, or once the thing is when you show it to someone and they say, "Oh, what is it?"
Well, but
Usually feedback from someone who actually gives a damn will reveal it. The trusted reader, but I'm a big believer in letting things cool, but some of it, I remember I went to an intensive years ago, like my first real brush with professional writers was in 2002 when I went to the Clarion West intensive science fiction writing workshop, described as science fiction boot camp. It's 6 weeks in Seattle where you're working like 20 hours a day with a selection of top-notch writers and professional editors. And I remember the most awarded editor in the field reading one of my, I think it was my 5th week submission, which was like the 7,000 or 8,000 word story that I'd written under it's the most intense pressure at every hour of the night. And during the critique session, at one point, he started off nice and as we all do in critique, and complimentary and a good sense of menace and all that. And then he said, "My God, it's like Star Trek."
Oh man. Is that a bad thing though? Yeah.
No, it was real bad. This is a real serious.
As in like just putting down Star Trek.
I actually think we could use more Star Trek these days, just to chime in, because the stuff that science fiction is pumping out isn't always the best. So, I support your Star Trek endeavor there.
Well, thank you. I'll try and dig it out for you.
I would read it. Yeah, send it my way.
I'm sure I've got it on a 5-inch floppy somewhere. And the last week's author, who was a very highly awarded author, looked at me and he raised his glass and he said, "What were you trying to say?" To another
Raising
story.
the glasses is the best part.
Right. I'm sometimes I wear my glasses just so I can raise them. They can't start talking. I'm like, wait, and I just put my glasses on, and then I let them, and they just raise them. Yeah, exactly. And then I have no actual fatherly advice. I just literally just raise them, and I walk out the room. It's like a mic drop. The raising the glasses for a nerd is the mic drop. You just raise it. But awesome. Thank you for that, Art. It's funny because I was listening to, and this was in the realm of business. It was one of these the CEOs talking kind of or people that have started businesses, not CEOs that have just inherited businesses someone else has started. He was, and it's okay. I mean, everyone has colds these days. But he would say, "Let me tell you my bad idea." And that can be just a way in, right? Here's my bad idea. Wow, but when he described it, he said, no. He's like, I actually do think it's a bad idea, but I say it because it starts the conversation. And then we can actually work our way to a good idea. And I actually think drafting for writers is very much that way. You've got to start with the bad idea and just be on the lookout, because there's going to be a good idea in there. If you're really doing the true work, I know I'm woo woo. If John was here, he'd be like, "You're so woo woo," and he'd be angry with me. I don't think he'd be angry with me. He's the kindest man in the world, but yeah. But I do think there's some notion to the idea of open yourself up to the muses, whatever those are, but just being open to the universe, right, and letting it in. And I think that also lets your subconscious kind of work. Which is, a real part, right? The subconscious is smarter than your conscious too. So I think there's a real, open yourself up. That opens the subconscious up. It opens you up to the universe. If you don't want to believe that, at least it opens up your subconscious. And I think if you just go, hey, this is a bad idea, and just let it be, man, I think that's a great way to start. Like just, and I think, and she used the word Egypt, right? Instead of like saying idiot, it was like Egypt, right? And I think that's really perfect because I think what happens, and I know this from education and stuff, right? One of the hard parts about learning is the being afraid of making a fool of yourself. So if you can get over the I'm going to feel foolish, you'll actually learn a lot faster. Yeah. And I think one of the things I've always been very good about learning things quick is because I have a high sense of like I don't care. Like I'll play the fool. In fact, I'll know things and I'll still play the fool on them. I've joked because it's the part I'm born to play, and I don't know if my parents agree, but I feel very much like the fool is the part I was born to play. But it really lets you open yourself up to things. If you realize like, oh, hey, that's okay. I can be a fool in this moment and like then grow and like do something with it. I think it can be a really empowering, not yes. Undercutting you. I think that could actually empower you to go ahead and feel like okay, whatever, this is a bad idea. I'm writing this out. And what I found, and that's why I was wondering, Daria, and I'm glad you asked the question, Jesse, with it is that sometimes you think something's bad and someone else might even agree that like it's going nowhere. Some third person might be like, that was the best thing I've ever, like that really touched me. I really like took something away from that. And that's why it's so hard to say like what is the who's the ideal reader. It's just the reader, right? I mean, it's really not like one ideal reader. It's connecting with some human out there through this strange alchemy of the written form. No, go ahead, Dar.
I think that also reminds us not to try and please everyone.
Sure.
Right.
You've got to write for you.
Right.
You've got to write for you. You try and please everyone or make it palatable, then you take all the juice out of it.
Right. Amen.
I early in my life, I read a lot and I really enjoyed a lot of stuff that most of the people around me would say was crap.
Sure.
But I was having fun.
Yeah.
I was enjoying those. Right. And I think a lot of my own work grew out of some of those bad ideas. So
that's brilliant. I think that all the time when they talk about like movies, right? They remake. What's the newest remake? I think they're coming out with Snow White. World. Well, Jurassic World's coming out. I think Snow White is like this weekend. They're doing.
What's that one where they
switch? The quote live action.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I just want to know when you get to say it's live action, because like now it's like 90% or 100% CGI, and they say it's live action. I'm like, how is this different than drawing it? You just used a computer to draw it for you, and there's like two humans in it. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that's a great point, right? Is like I always think like, why remake the great stuff? Because like, you're just going to get pounded for it because everyone loves Snow White. They don't need a new Snow White. But there's so many ideas that you watch and you're like, damn, there was a really cool idea there. And writers do that all the time, right? They go, oh, I would have veered left or I would have veered right. Yes. I as I said that, I'm literally, I don't know. I know on everyone's camera, it's slightly different. I said, I would have veered left and I'm going, this is right for me. I don't know my right and left. This is my bad idea. Yeah, stage left, but I think that's true though. It's like, what is the like? Hey, there was a kernel in here that's really interesting. What if we followed that along? That would. I always think, why don't you remake the movies that had a lot of potential but didn't succeed, or the books, things like that, versus remaking the stuff that everyone already loves, because you're gonna get pounded for it one way or the other because they already love it. It's hard to hard to redo it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I will say, just going back to what you guys were talking about in terms of just starting with crap or like putting sand in the sandbox, like I think with drafting, what it seems like for me, like what ends up happening is that you're writing something, you're writing it all out, it's crap, it's a silly idea, whatever, and then it starts to get better. It starts to get better because as you keep sitting with this material and revisiting this material, you develop a deeper and deeper relationship with it, and you understand the people you're writing about, the situation you're writing about, the themes, more and more each time you write it. So it's really almost like writing is a way to like bring yourself deeper and deeper into this story, into this idea. So I think that's the magic of it is.
Right. Amen. It's almost like you're excavating the truth, right? I mean, it's like there's a truth there,
exactly.
and you're just trying to dig like slowly to it.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. So, any final words before we move on to the next quotes?
No, that was good.
Awesome, very good. And yeah, thank you. And I have to say hi to Sue, friend of the show, and Sue, we love you. Thanks for joining the chat.
Sue.
Who's done lots of open bars with us. So thanks so much for joining us today. So let's move to the next one here. And I should have looked these names up, but I think more about the monikers I'm going to give the guest than I do how foolish I'm going to look saying these names. So I'm just going to say it, and then someone can try to correct me. And this is actually, this is 1990s with her working, so she might still be alive, or he might, I don't know. Maeve Binchy. So M-A-E, Maeve Binchy. Okay,
Maeve,
very
right.
good. Bad pronunciation to good pronunciation. Maeve Binchy.
Bad idea into a good idea.
Very good. If your characters aren't giving you trouble, they're not real enough. The best ones will wake you up at night with their demands. And Sebastian Barry had some character advice for us as well, as your characters should cost you sleep. If you're sleeping peacefully, you're not doing them justice. So I think those two wrapped really beautifully together. So we could just talk about that aspect.
I just read one of Sebastian Barry's books. He is phenomenal. He is phenomenal contemporary Irish author. I was so blown away. I read it twice in a row.
Very good. What book was it?
I can't think of the title. It was a Booker finalist. Old God's Time.
Old God's Time. Okay. Very good.
Oh man.
Thanks for that.
Heard of it.
Awesome.
Did you know Irish writers have won 6 Booker Prizes and 4 Nobels?
I believe it.
That's a lot for a small island.
Yes.
Right.
Something in the water. Whiskey.
The waters of life, Jess. We need to get it. So after this, drink a lot during the show, and then right after you're gonna get just pen and paper. Don't do the computer. Pen and paper.
That's right.
Compose something.
Oh, if I do it with pen and paper, then you will have no idea what it says.
This is true.
If I've been drinking.
I have the first chicken scratch. Oh my God.
You know what? That's true. I can't even read my writing now. When I started, I used to, because so what? I've been trying to figure out my age this year. I'm 47 in July. So when I started, there was computers around. My parent had a computer, but it wasn't like everyone had a computer. Everyone had a laptop, right? So everything I wrote was by hand. And then part of the process was writing it by hand and then taking that and putting it into the computer. And that was edit 1. And then at some point I was like, okay, this is too inefficient. And, computer, you walk around with a mega computer, as judging by the late 80s, early 90s, right in your pocket every day. And so I was like, I have to move away from it. But I think that was, and my handwriting was very distinctive, but I could read it perfectly. And so people would go, and sometimes people would even say I had nice handwriting. Now I can't even form letters on a page. It is such when I try to write something out, I'm like, how do you write this again? How does my hand work in this way? But does anyone, of the panel here, does anyone?
You guys see this? This is my signature, and my wife makes fun of me all the time.
Very good.
She's like, what the hell is that? But it makes perfect sense to me.
No, I needed
Jesse Darnay.
Yeah, I can see it.
My head.
Yeah, mine looks literally like a W, but the last part of it swirls, and that forms the entire rest of my name. That is the ILLIAMRHINCY. It is that.
So. Swirl. That's it.
Right. So, but do you guys' characters ever wake you up at night?
Big time.
Is there any particularly instances you remember?
Oh God, particular ones, probably not. But yeah, if I'm with book, it's almost nightly. I have to take dictation.
I
And
love how you say with book, like someone would say with child. I'm with
I'm
book.
sorry, with
I love
child.
how you say with book, like someone would say with child.
Yes,
Sorry.
exactly. And it's usually it can be dialogue, but it's more usually scene development or something, an event within a scene
Sure.
or a part of a scene that's developing. But yeah, very often, and I know other writers to whom it happens.
Right.
Characters tend to criticize me after attentive. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, when I'm writing, once I've written it, that's what happened.
Really?
Sure.
Wow.
That's what happened, and those events can't be changed.
Lay down the law.
Oh, okay.
So
the characters will beat you up over it?
Well, characters will come back and say, "Why the hell would I do that?"
Oh boy.
So often it's more of a monotheistic type
And
guy.
so then I have to come up with a reason
Sure.
why that character or why this series of events happened the way they did, and I have to justify it. It's like I have to justify my behavior to my characters.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
That's me. I love that.
I love learning about different writers' process.
I love that. I had on I'm blanking. Oh, Eric LaSalle. So he was he was in ER. I forget the doctor's name and things, but so he's pretty well known as as an actor, and he's done tons of production and things. But he's also a writer, and so he had come on and we were talking about it, and he was talking about. He asked, he's like, "Oh, do your characters ever like fight to stay alive?" Right? Because he writes thrillers and things. So there's that point where a certain character, and he's like, "I feel them like fighting me," when we're hitting it. So, when does that happen? Like, when do you feel like the character is talking to you? Is that like, before the story even starts, right? When you're still in kind of ideation, like it's right. I always feel like you write the story, and this is a me thing, but I think it's a fairly general thing too, is you write the story you're meant to write at that time, like something's kind of drawing you to it. And once you hit there, it's like, so the characters could talk to you even before you hit there, right? And they're drawing you. It's like, hey, I have a story to tell. Get over here. This is something's going on here. You're going to be really into this. You may not get it now, but this is going to be really cool. I actually feel very much the novel I'm working on. I'm about a fourth of the way through right now. I feel very much like it was like that. I kept kind of going, I don't know if I want to write that. And it just kept gnawing on me. And I'm like, all right, I'll give you a chance, And it was like by the second, third date, I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this. I'm into this. My wife famously says that like we weren't dating. I joke. I'm like, I thought we were dating for like 4 months, and she's like, I didn't know we were dating at all. And that's how I felt with this book. I'm like, I thought this was just kind of casual, and I'm like, okay, I'm committed. Like we're good. But when has that happened for you guys? When do the characters really kind of start speaking to you?
Shall I start?
Of course, you just jump in.
Make stuff up.
Well, and you guys may not know this, because the view you guys get with the software is actually different than how it shows it. So really, right now, it's our beautiful foreheads, or you guys' 3 beautiful heads, and backgrounds, and then this gargoyle. And then the Temple Bar in Ireland is our background right now. It's the live Temple Bar feed. Yeah.
Cool.
So if you guys go back and look at it, you can see the people. Everyone's always outside. When I was setting it up, everyone's always outside. And I was like, oh, that'd be a really cool background. And we can be at Temple Bar, in Ireland, in Dublin right now. So, yeah. So that's where we're at right now. So virtually, wonderful. Of course, but yeah.
I wish I were there, man. Place is great.
Right?
That'd be fun. That would be really fun. We'll do a writers drinking whiskey in Ireland one of these days. It's coming.
There you
Field
go.
trip. But anyone want Dario? Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah.
So and the question was, when does it start to happen? When do you feel like the characters actually start speaking to you?
Weirdly, I remembered that one. I usually have to ask you to repeat them, but I actually remember that one.
You haven't drunk enough.
Well, I'm just thinking. I finished the green stuff. I better get a Guinness.
Very good, very good.
Because that's all they serve at the Temple Bar, right? I have had characters pretty much come and talk to me about writing their story before I start the book. I'm very character driven. I mean, there is usually a what if or a situational, a situation, but usually it starts with a character or two coming to knock on the door. But they've never woken me up before I've started writing or telling their story. That's just, they just come in at any time and kind of take up residence and don't pay the rent. Once I start writing and I'm in process.
That's why you moved out of California. Too much rent control. They were squatting for years on end. You're like, I can't handle this anymore.
I couldn't do it. I mean, I needed a hotel. But once the story's rolling, and it's frequent that I will wake up during the night with a character wanting a scene or some dialogue written or something, and I'm not good. I never keep a notepad by the bed. I'm not good at that. So occasionally I have actually got up to write something out.
Sure.
Because chances are pretty good I'll forget it in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's frequent. It's frequent. They're very real, and they're there 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Jesse, Austin, you guys?
These days it's interesting. I feel more. I haven't really thought about this, but just listening to you guys, I feel more like a director. So I'm working on two different pieces. And one is in first person, the other is in close third. So I feel like I kind of wake up and show up on the set. And I'm either the actor for the first person piece, or I'm the director for the close third person piece. And so it's interesting. Just like it becomes almost like a kinetic thing when I'm writing, especially the first person. It's like I'm really trying to just embody this person, pretend that I am this person. And I think there are some after effects, some lingering after effects. Like I know that this project is living inside me, all the aspects, all the time,
sure.
Whether I'm conscious of it or not. But I think it seems to be that's the best analogy for the way I'm approaching it nowadays is in the entertainment business, and this is the set, and this is my role on the set, and every day I show up, it's full force. I'm either watching the characters very closely or I am the character.
Right. That's the part that people who don't write don't get. You're actually writing all the time.
Yeah,
it's always happening in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Amen.
I know.
Because I write when I'm writing thrillers, it's not uncommon for me to write my characters into a corner. I mean, write them into an impossible situation, and then wait for them to tell me, how do I get out of this?
Sure.
That's character driven, man.
And they will come around and say, oh, here's how I got out of that. I did this and did, I said, oh yeah. Then I just like the man said, then I'm taking dictation, they're telling me.
Also, you've got to write something about just your relationship to your nonfiction, about your relationship to your characters. It's very interesting.
Okay.
I would love to read that, even if it's just an essay. Memoir,
right.
I don't know. Love
Right. Well, it's funny you say that, Jesse. The one piece on writing I've written, and will probably write for my entire career, was I had a literary publication, Passages North. It's a college, I think, in Michigan, actually, Daria, up towards your way. But they had asked, hey, you want to write? Would you write something about it? And they had published one of my short stories, and one of the weirder ones. I think they had published Amen. Someone that's read it. It's a first person omniscient story with an unreliable narrator, right? So and it's in my my short story collection, which is over my corner here. It's tiny because I'm a horrible marketer, but without expiration. And so when they asked me, I was like, oh man, they published a story I thought no one would ever publish. And so, yes, I will write something. And that was actually where I came to it from, because I like to say, and I like to make sure people know, and especially my wife, is that I was an actor, you know? And when you're an actor, you don't say I'm an actor, you say I'm an actor, you know? And so when I wrote that, but it was very much about that. It was that you have to come at it from being the actor, like what's my motivation, what's all of that. But you also have to be the director. You have to be the audience, you know, like. And so when you actually start looking at it in that broad, in the head, I really did grow up in the theater. I did lots of acting and stuff in high school and in the community theater and things. And I had kids so young. I had cut it off very early so I could actually be a dad. And I was also in like the desert outside of LA, and you know the theater is fun. There's a lot of theater there, but it's not paying you either. So I had gone away from it, but it really did inform the way I tell stories. And so I think that actually thinking about it that way, when you think about the characters, if you inhabit them like the actor, right, that cliched, what's my motivation, it actually starts to really mean something. You go, no, what is this character's motivation? You know, like, and then...
I always think of writing as method acting. You've got to.
Sure.
You've got to, if you're character driven. It's you've got to, you are in every scene. Yeah.
Right. And you have to find all of them, and then you have to think about the how the audience sees it. And so if you think about a stage, or you could think about it like a movie, right? The cinematography, right? So I tend to think of that as like, okay, if I'm going to describe the scene, how is the light slanting through? Like how are those things happening, and how does the characters see that from happening? So, and I think all of that really kind of adds to it. Oh,
We lost you.
Dario popped off. Let me get him back on for us, back on the stream.
Oh, he's here.
There you go. You back with us, Dario?
Yay.
Okay.
I thought you were on the free version and your time had run out.
No. I wish I was on the free version. I would have made more money off the free version, but
Well, it was closing time in Ireland.
You know what? I've had this, so I set this up with the feed. Yeah, there's no such thing. I set up the feed, and I'm like, okay, I want the feed behind us. And I'm like, okay, what do I have to do? And then every single time, no matter the time of day I've gone, there's been people outside the bar, like, hanging out there. And I'm like, man, I need to hit this bar at some point. I haven't been there. There's no closing time. Temple Bar, yeah.
My wife and I were in Ireland. We stayed at a hotel in that area, Temple Bar.
Very cool.
And I remember like coming home with her at like 3 a.m. and just listening from out of her window, like, and it was still just madness everywhere. I mean, there was no hint that this debauchery was going to end anytime soon. Like, it was really funny. And then when we woke up on Sunday, it was completely silent.
Right. Very funny. Awesome. So let's see. I was checking the chat. Pepper and Sue are being fairly hilarious on the chat. So thanks so much, guys, for being there. You guys will have to look at it after the fact. That there's too much for me to read quickly here, but it's really funny. They're going back and forth. But awesome. So let's move on to the next. So we did character. Before we do, any final thoughts before I read the next bit of Irish wisdom here? No? All right. So another name I'll butcher, John Banville. Write with your emotional scars, not your wounds. One tells a story, the other just bleeds all over the page. And then O'Brien, write what disturbs you, what you fear, what you have not been willing to speak about. Be willing to be split open. And I thought those two went pretty wonderfully together, if not morbidly together. So, anyone want to jump in and talk about that?
Sure, I can. I mean, that's why I write poetry. That's poetry right there for me. Like it's,
Sure.
I write poetry. It's a completely different approach than my approach to fiction, and that's it right there. Is like, think I try to think of things that are really going on with me or things I've experienced that are I know there's a lot there, and maybe I haven't really confronted it as deeply as I could, or things that scare me.
Whoa, what just happened?
That I trip over are things that everybody else feels too, or maybe I'm projecting. It's when you write stories that are all about heroes and villains, eventually you wind up in a place where you're not sure because they're not sure. Am I in fact the hero?
Right.
Am I the bad guy here?
Right.
It's the real bad guys are the people with no empathy.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
The real good guys are constantly questioning themselves. And I guess my self-image is that I'm kind of a good guy, and I'm constantly questioning myself.
Yeah.
So my characters are constantly questioning themselves.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's so interesting how your characters are just really kind of like a projection of, they're their own people, but they're also just such a projection of you and
yes,
what you're going through. It's so interesting.
You are in all of them.
Yeah. Man.
Right. Well, it's funny. I think about that quite a bit. There's that old philosophical argument, right? They'll go, if you could go back in time when Hitler was a baby, do you kill baby Hitler? Right? And I used to think there was a very easy answer to that. And that is, if you could go back in time, no, don't kill the baby. Maybe you could actually do something to make the baby not become Hitler, right? Like that as we know him. The flip side of that, though, is maybe you can't, right? Like maybe I'm not allowing for the fact that there's true evil, right? Like, and it's easy to say, hey, with some guidance and some care, Ted Bundy doesn't become Ted Bundy.
Right.
Maybe Ted Bundy becomes Ted Bundy. Maybe Hitler becomes Hitler, that might be a very optimistic, maybe too optimistic, too hopeful look to just say that, no, sometimes there's true evil that you have to confront, right? And it's coming, right? Maybe you nourish Hitler and he's a great guy, and the next guy that rises up in the Third Reich, right, is even worse. He doesn't do all the drugs, and he doesn't kind of lose the bet, and then he does conquer the known world, or I guess the world at that point. Or maybe
Ted Bundy becomes Batman,
right? Yeah, maybe.
Or becomes Dexter if you like that show.
Sure, right.
And then you're back to that question: is this better? It's different, but is it actually better?
Right. Right.
It
is. It's an interesting conundrum. There when you actually get to it, and I think that's what I love kind of exploring with the character. And actually, when I was talking about the novel I'm writing right now, is that it was based on a short story called Teeth that was in my short story collection, and that's the first chapter with some kind of minor changes for things, and it seems very much like those morally gray characters, and that story is very much about like. I think the quote that's on the back is, are we good people that make bad decisions or bad people that sometimes make good decisions? I might be butchering my own words a little bit here, but I've been butchering everyone's name, so I think it's fair. but and it was actually kind of that Hitler question that kind of hit. That was like, oh wait, what about when you hit that? Oh, everything's morally gray, and we can't make. What about when you hit the no? This is truly evil. How do you actually deal with that? From everything is gray, when something's black, and that was the thing. I was like, okay, I get it. I get why you kept drawing me to this. Here I am, muses. Use me as you will. But awesome. So I have more quotes. Anything before we move on? I have some Oscar Wilde quotes, which we could not get through St. Patty's Day without Oscar Wilde.
Anything about the scars and the emotions in writing?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. First of all, I think Austin mentioned that the fears and scars are pretty universal, which I think is true, or maybe universal. You qualified it. I think they often are. I've once written true evil in one of my novels. Bill knows it, and it was the best fun.
Sure.
But I'm we all creep into our novels. There's but I certainly try not to do it consciously. But I did. My first book was a non-fiction memoir of a somewhat traumatic, tragicomic event in my life or period, and there were a lot of scars in that. I mean, the book was written in a white heat of catharsis, and it worked, but there was a lot of fears and scars and even bleeding wounds in that. So I've done it, kind of got it out of the way, I think. But you have to be real. I mean, if an emotion's running hot and strong, I'm not sure you can keep it out of your fiction one way or another.
Right. Well, I'm not sure you should.
No, I think you should.
I think you. Yeah, I mean, you have the editing hat, right? So I think sometimes, like, if it's hot and strong, write it.
Right.
And I think if you're, Daria, you do lots of editing. So, but even for just the writer editing their own work, there is something to but this is the emotion. Right. I don't think it's healthy to always run away from your emotions. Right. Sometimes it's this is that heat. This is that passion. This is the bleeding on the page. And I think, and I know I'm artsy fartsy, but to me, the real author, the real artist bleeds for their work sometimes, I don't think always. I think that then you're going to bleed out if you're always doing it. But sometimes, no, you put it out there. You put it out there and let it go.
But do you think it's transmuted on the page? I mean, it's going to be out there, but it's not going to be necessarily directly congruent. It's going to be kind of transmuted and run through a blender into the character and the situation.
Well, if you're writing fiction, if you're writing fiction, you got to, if you're nonfiction, poetry.
Very personal. It's very obvious what it's about me, and even though there's a speaker, what I experienced. But
you said poem, Jesse?
Not with poetry, for me. It's very clear, and that's part of where I've gone with poetry. I want to make it very clear that this is what I'm struggling with and what I'm going through, even though there is a speaker. Right.
Well, and sometimes it's there's powers in feeling what you're feeling.
Yes.
And then taking control of it, right? So I think sometimes you've got to let it just be out there. Yeah. And people will relate to it. I mean, it's nice to think we're so unique, and in ways, I say it so mockingly because I say everything so mockingly, but in ways we are, right? Like in ways we are very unique, but at the core, we're all coming, there's a source. We're all humans, whatever that source might be. It might just be this biologically human. It might be a source that's the generation of the universe. We're coming from the same place. So even if you think you're the only one that's ever experienced that, if you write it, you will find other people that experience that.
Yeah. But when you're laying the words down, isn't that when you're maybe indirectly trying to make sense of it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're
Sure.
feeling it, you're just feeling it. But when you're writing characters, for some reason, fiction has to make sense.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like you said for some reason.
I mean, it depends.
For sure.
You know, getting its
Well,
weight.
Well, it's experimental.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, if you're doing mysteries or thrillers, the kind of junk that I do, you're trying to make sense of it.
Sure.
It's your characters have to at least appear to be rational, logical beings.
Yeah.
Unlike myself.
Well,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I think
they have to adhere to what the reader understands, right? Like,
Yes.
so every character doesn't have to be Sherlock Holmes and be super rational, logical, but you can't have a character that's Sherlock Holmes that suddenly starts blathering about their feelings, right? Like, so there's that plausibility, right? The aspect of it,
Right.
or the I think there's that weird, and I think it's really fun to try to capture, and it's difficult, but I think it's really fun. Is that weird emotional logic? Is that something isn't logical, but emotionally it's logical, and if you can connect that to the reader, they go, "Oh, I get it." Right? Like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, you're illogical, but I get it. But you have to find that. I think your point, it has to be relatable, right? You have to find that point that the reader gets it. It can't just be the author suddenly blathering on the page about what bothers them.
I was gonna say, it's especially with fiction, it's very subtle, right? It's like
Sure.
you have a sense of all these emotions, but the way it's expressed is through like small gestures or the things that are not said, etc. It's very good fiction. I think is it's very. You have to kind of dig to you get a sense of like, okay, this is the emotion that's being discussed, this is the problem, but you have to kind of dig.
I was
It's
just
the old
gonna mention
Hemingberg's.
subtext. That's really true.
Yeah, the Hemingway iceberg,
Right,
symbol that he would say. I do sometimes think though, and I do want to move on to our next bit here, but I think it's really interesting is that I feel like that got very common, right? That iceberg, right? And absolutely, that I think that's a good idea, right? There always should be more subtext than there is text, because that's just how life is, right? But that wasn't always the case with writing, right? Shakespeare was, and maybe there was always more subtext, but there was also a lot of everything wasn't like what was unsaid, right? People were saying things. I think sometimes we get ourselves modernly the current zeitgeist with it is that we get ourselves a bit in a bind because we're afraid to say anything, right? We want to leave everything. Like, you can't have catharsis, you can't have epiphany, and I know this isn't 100% for everyone because there's so many writers nowadays, right? But there's this idea that like if a writer actually has an epiphany on the page, you took it from the reader. I don't actually know that that's always the case. I think sometimes it can happen together, and that we can be a little more bold. I do feel like sometimes we've lost our boldness, and I say that in the mass aggregate because there's so many great, especially indie writers. But there's lots of great, even traditionally published writers that still do it. But I think that critical mass, the iceberg that's sticking out right now is very much the don't say it, like leave it for the reader, leave it for the imagination kind of school of thought.
Well, there's these endless kind of probably generational fashions in everything, and it
Sure.
certainly applies to writing. We're still kind of trapped in postmodernism. I say trapped.
Right.
I mean, I kind of like it, but
Well,
the novel is a moving target, isn't it? And the fashions, God knows, they're more rigid than ever. Certainly, with traditional publishing. That's why I like working with indie authors and often reading them because all things being equal, they tend to break those walls a little more easily and drop out of that rigid
Right.
package of technique and. But that's a really true point.
Right. Awesome. Any differing, and you guys feel free to disagree, because my whole life is people disagreeing with me, so you will not hurt my feelings.
Not this,
not this time.
we're all in the same place on that.
Yeah, very good. And I do have to point out, Sue had a very brilliant comment on here that I have to say, is that the real bad guys are the guys that leave me 2-star reviews. And so, amen, Sue. Especially the anonymous reviews. Like, if you're going to leave the 2-star, put your name to it.
Put your name, that's right.
Yeah.
Can I diverge on? Can I go put a little sidebar up on that?
Of course.
So something really interesting I've discovered with Amazon reviewers. If you click on the reviewer name, it'll bring you their page, and you can look at all their reviews.
Right.
And it's very telling, because occasionally you'll find one who has only ever reviewed one thing, and that's your book.
Really?
Or who leaves 1-star reviews on everything. Or with products, you'll find people who leave 5-star reviews of the most astonishing variety of products. Yeah, check it out. It's a big tell.
Those, I think, are fake.
Oh, absolutely.
I think so.
If I get a 1-star or 2-star review, I go and look, and if that individual gives every book he reads 2 stars, then my first thought, of course, is, well, his opinion doesn't really matter because he hates everything. But my second thought is, why do you keep reading these books?
Right.
You're having disappointing experience after disappointing experience after disappointing experience. Man, you need to move to something else.
I love that. I usually think it's another writer, but I like your explanation.
Season 5 is a 2-star reader.
Sure. My favorite, as I've had a few reviews that have mentioned me by name and went, Mr. Hincy, you should know. And I'm like, man, I really triggered them. Like, I actually probably did something well. Like, they were really, like, something really connected with them. Like, I hit a funny bone here. Like, there was something there.
Reaction either way. That's good art.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Amen.
You got a response.
Very good. So let's move on to Oscar Wilde here. And let me check time. Okay. So Oscar Wilde, the first draft is just you telling yourself the story. Don't let anyone peek at it, or they'll send you to the madhouse. And then John McGaharon, the only way to write is well. And how do you do it is your own damn business. First drafts are meant to be a mess. That's where the gold lies buried. So, talking first drafts here, which I kind of love that idea, right? I think, and I've heard lots of people say, like, there's a notion of a vomit draft. I've heard people say, which is vomit it out, right? Don't think about it, or zero draft. I actually tend to think I write 0 drafts. That's just kind of where I find everything. It's like a mega outline. I was doing Dario, we've been talking about it a bit recently here via email, but Pirates of Appalachia. I did a 0 draft for that many years ago, and that finally the story, but I ended up rewriting essentially the whole thing. I mean, it was just a mega outline essentially at the end of the day, but So how do you guys feel about first drafts in general and those quotes more broadly?
I like that bit of you're just telling yourself the story. Mm-hmm. I think sure. that's pretty much it. You're telling yourself that, or once you get about halfway through, they're telling you the story.
Right. Sure.
You're onto something.
Yeah. Yes. Then you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that too. And actually, Stephen King says almost the identical thing. But you're telling yourself. I love the term 0 draft, by the way, Bill. I've always liked that. But yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it's for no one else's eyes at that point. 'Cause it's apart from anything else, it's on life support.
Sure. Well, I've heard people say before is that don't tell anyone the story you're working on. Which I talked about the story I'm working on. I don't find this for myself, but I've heard people say it, is that part of the joy in telling a story is the telling. So if you tell people the story you're working on, you actually decrease your motivation for working on it, right?
I believe that.
So I'll tell it because it doesn't decrease it for me, but I actually completely see that, because like part of the joy is getting to unveil that to someone, editor, beta readers, whatever it might be, kind of down the line. But there is that aspect of, I used to hate telling people I was a writer. And the main reason I really hated this was oh, you're a writer. What have I read? And they don't read books, so really they're asking you what movie they've seen of yours, right? And they haven't. I haven't made any movies, right? So they haven't, and then they're going to tell me the book they're never going to write, right? And then it's like, I'm going to tell you this book I'm never going to write, and I'm going to spend, now as your Uber driver, I'm going to spend 20 minutes to where I get you to where you're going to tell you about a book I'm never going to write, right? So my wife would be like, "Why don't you tell them?" I'm like, "That's why. I don't want to deal with all of that."
That's probably more common in the Los Angeles area. In Chicago, people are like, "I don't care."
Maybe that might be true, right? Yeah.
LA, I think everybody in the back of their minds like,
everyone's a star.
I have a book.
Yeah.
If you live here near DC, you tell somebody you're a writer, and they'll say, "No, I mean, what do you do for a living?"
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do to make money?
Right.
Sure. Everyone's a writer. What do you do for a living?
Exactly.
What's your real job?
Right. That's funny.
But the fragility thing is really important. Not everyone feels that way. I mean, I know lots of people who, write books almost by committee. They'll
Sure.
work through it with their writers group at every chapter.
Well, we've had Janice Hardy on the show who's talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's so collaborative, and she's so open, and there's no fragility there at all. But to me, it's you've got to keep that energy in. That's how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, it's the cure for writer's block. Sometimes I'll just share a scene, not tell the story, and they were doing this. And invariably, people who aren't writers go, no, here's what happens.
Right. Sure.
And they tell you, here's what happens. And they say, oh, okay, sure, fine.
I like that. That's sneaky.
What's interesting, what's interesting, I find that I've been working on these projects for a while, whenever I do actually talk about the story, I think a lot of my friends take me more seriously now because I have been published. And so when I do start talking about the story, it's like, I don't know, it's interesting to see them, one of the stories, how they interpret it, and then how they kind of file it away with all the other entertainment that's out there. And I just see it completely reduced, which is so weird. Sure. It's like this story, which means so much to me. I'm telling you, takes place during the pandemic and all this stuff happens. They're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, what's on YouTube?
Wow.
You just see it filed away as this one little moat of entertainment among an ocean that's out there.
But
sure.
Since we've talked, sorry, Bill.
No, Dario, go ahead.
Since we've touched on the worth of a writer, I do want to say that Ireland really values its writers. I mean, the continent of Europe as a whole does, but you probably all know writers don't pay income tax in Ireland.
Oh, I didn't know that. No, that's awesome.
What?
Unless that's changed in the last 10 years or so, but I don't think so. Maybe that's why they have so many Nobel Prizes.
It's nourished.
As they get the time to do it. But
really,
America and to some extent England, to my knowledge, are really the only countries where writing isn't seen as a valued professional. You go to Italy or Greece and tell someone you're a writer, and you the respect rolls off in a wave.
Right.
Sure. Well, it's true. It's and I think of it broadly. When I say writer, I think storyteller.
Yes.
And so that can be whatever medium you're doing the storytelling in. But you do see that, right? Where it's like, hey, I will go spend $8, like, because I'm in California, so everything is $8 to $1,000. But I will go spend $8 on my Starbucks cup of coffee. Oh, hey, you want me to pay $8 for an ebook? No, that should be free. Like, why would I pay for entertainment?
They'll pay $8 for the coffee and tip the guy.
Right?
You're right.
Right? Hey,
And
amen.
you're right. For us, it's wait a minute. Ebook? Why should I have to pay for that? And 99 cents. I spent a year building this.
Right. Right.
And it's going to last them 10 or 15 hours.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, if you actually think about the amount of and it's and I don't want to belabor it. We will move on here to a bit, but so writers have become an industry in themselves. Is that they've realized, hey, all these people care so much about storytelling that, you know what, we can also charge them for all these things. Here's the marketing. Here's your YouTube. Here's your, whatever it happens to be, right? Like, I don't like to throw editing in that because I feel like editing and writing is very, simpatico. Like you're just trying to get the story to the great. But even cover art, all of these things, it's just like it. Oh, yeah. Now the writer's an industry that they're soaking off of, and it's like it's okay for a writer to spend $10,000 to produce a book that they will only make $150 on, right? Or like whatever it might be, right? Like there's no concept of the fact that like, no, like, so you're taking the storyteller, you made him into a profit farm versus.
That's a real tough one. Being given I am an editor, my feeling about that is that writer services shops are the ones that need to really go away and be crucified. The people who charge you what it would cost you to hire all the creatives and individuals yourself and then farm it out to people around the world who they're paying, very little money or using Edit GPT to edit your book and charging you for it.
Sure. Right.
But it is, I mean, what you say is true. It's true, right? People, there's so much more money to be made in providing writer services than in writing for most people.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same applies to contests.
Sure.
Where you pay someone to enter something, or for my friends who are poets, very often they pay to be in some contest, and the prize is we'll put you in the book we're getting ready to put out.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Big money in contest.
100% how it is.
Right. Well, and there's a cool website, and I think Daria, you've mentioned this one to me before, but Writers Beware.
Yes.
And they do a really nice job. So any writers out there that want to enter a competition or something, they at least point out the ones that are they're vanity presses essentially, right? Like you can join the competition, either just get your gold ribbon and they don't care, they're just giving it to you because you paid, or the ones that are profiteering, completely off the writers, right? Otherwise, I get it. The judges need to make some money. There's some reason that they need to do it. How do you do that? And I think that's a nice website that tries to keep that fair. But it's a deeper than St. Patty's Day conversation. Sorry.
And one we shouldn't have when we're drinking. Go ahead.
Very good. All right.
Do I have time to get a Guinness?
Of course. Go get a Guinness.
I'll be right back. I'll grab you one too.
Please do. Please do. So, and so for anyone watching, so I'm going to move on. So we have some James Joyce, advice here. So celebrate the complexity in your writing. Truth is rarely neat or pure, and neither should your exploration of it be. And Oscar Wilde had something talking about truth as well, which was that truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either. And modern literature, a complete impossibility. So I love the notion of thinking about truth and writing, right? Sometimes I think people think it's too nebulous, right? We don't get to. Oh, did everyone leave me? Everyone popped off the screen, so I'm going to talk for a bit and make sure I get everyone back on here. And here we go. Let me get. Sorry, guys. Let me make sure everything popped off here for some reason. Showing stream. Dene. Okay, everyone back?
Twas the little people did that. Just to put you on your place, Hincy.
It probably was. It probably was actually the little people that did that. Very good. I don't know. Sometimes it kicks everyone out, and I'm just me on the screen. And I know. So what's really weird about how the software works is that what you guys see is not actually what I see or what everyone else sees. And I actually don't have access to what you guys are looking at. Like, I know everyone's on the screen.
It looks like Zoom, basically.
It looks like Zoom, right? So I look at you guys, and there's Temple Bar behind you. We have the little things, and then that is what like YouTube is looking at. I don't know. And occasionally it pops everyone off, and I'm like, where did everyone go? And you guys are like, you idiot, we're right here. But and I am an idiot.
You went off to another universe for a few seconds.
Yeah, right. That's what happens. So awesome. So actually, Dario, let me read it back for you because you had gotten the Guinness, and I wanted to keep us rolling. So I had two from James Joyce and Oscar Wilde. Joyce was, and I think this was from Ulysses. I had noted here, but celebrate the complexity in your writing. Truth is really neat or pure, and neither should your exploration of it be. And Oscar Wilde was, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Oh, I love those.
Mm-hmm. So more generally, truth and writing, right? Like how do you get to it, and like what and do you guys think so? This was a very early 19th century, like early 19th century up to like, mid, even a little later, probably 1980s, maybe everyone starts getting very like, charging things and mall girl talk and stuff. But up until then, thinking about truth in your writing was a very natural, not even just natural, but a very mandate, right? You didn't write things and not think about what was the truth inherent in them. So when you guys are writing, how do you handle that? Like, do you think about and I'm sure maybe it's not the first draft, but how do you handle that aspect of it?
Wow.
It's a tough question.
Yeah. Fiction is where you tell the truth.
For sure.
And I think we are probably all on some level very careful about the truths we tell and how we tell them. Especially, sadly, in the current social framework where outrageous things are put forward and labeled the truth. In our fiction, we really have to really have to parse that. What are the facts? That's part of what makes mysteries such fun.
Sure.
Because that character's entire objective throughout the entire book is to get to the truth, not a truth, not some truth. The truth. And yeah, I think we're all on some level very, very careful with that. maybe even more so with poetry.
Yeah.
Or
it happens for me. Like truth happens at the level of the sentence. I write the sentence, I rewrite the sentence, I rewrite the sentence, I rewrite the sentence. And at a certain point, it's as someone said once, probably many people have said this. Like it has to be greater than the sum of its parts. And
Sure.
in order for that to happen, there's some fifth element, right? And I feel like all you can do is show up and try and just write this thing as honestly as you possibly can. Like, this is my experience. This is how I'm seeing the characters. This is what they would do. This makes sense. This shows that they're in love, or they feel this way about each other, or they don't know, or whatever. And then you write it, and you write it, and you write it. And then all of a sudden, you write one version of the sentence, and it's like, wait a minute, something is happening here beyond the sentence. And that is, to me, that is truth. Like, it is.
Yes.
Something, visceral, inherent. Like it's not
right.
So I think it's it's for me it's just the hard work, the Sisyphean task of just
rolling that boulder
rolling
up.
the boulder with each
well,
sentence.
and there's some truth. Yeah, but I mean, and there's some truth to that aspect of life, right? That we all understand that, like, yeah, you're rolling a boulder up the mountain.
Yep.
In life, you actually never get to the top, right? I mean, there's just you die, right? You never actually completely get there. So, it's interesting because there is that, and I think in modern times it's gotten we've gotten too nebulous with it. Is that there's objective fact, right? Like something happened. Like we should be able to agree on the objective facts of things. And then there's kind of the fiction teller's idea of truth, which is this
right.
more inherently human thing that we all can intuit, and we understand as truth when we see it, but you may not be able to measure it, and this materialistic kind of view, right? But we can all intuit that and kind of agree, and it can get difficult. In that sense, that okay, you know what? Here's here's my truth, and then sometimes like that can be fine. That can also be I have us linked here. That can be fine. It can also be kind of can be nebulous. It can not be something that is something we can all agree on. Or at least understand. I don't know that we always have to agree, but we need to understand. Let's see, I have Austin back. Let me get him here.
Was I gone?
Everyone left me for a second.
Oh.
I don't know why this happens. Let me get everyone back on. Jesse's back on. Dario back on.
Well,
okay.
William.
Rejoin.
William, I should depart because I've got this helpless little, 7-pound lump of, wonder.
It's an anchor with a diaper.
I can't be away from the duties too long.
Right.
I stuck a little early.
Right.
Sadly.
Amen. No problem, Jesse. You get back to the baby.
Yeah.
Well, priorities are in the right place, brother.
This has been awesome. I love these things so much. I just learn new things from other writers, even from you, Dario. Every time we talk, I learn something new, which is amazing. Yeah, especially that you like Guinness. I didn't know that.
I do.
All right. Love you guys.
Very good. Awesome, Jesse. Have a good night. Awesome. So I think what we can do then, so I have the last portion here. Anyone going? So I have, I call it shots. So everyone be prepared to do mighty swigs of whatever you're drinking. And I wanted to start this for St. Paddy's Day with St. Paddy's Day trivia. So, and anyone, Sue, Pepper, anyone playing along on the stream, feel free to play along here. So St. Paddy's Day trivia. What is the first U.S. city to hold a St. Patrick's Day parade?
Got to be Boston.
Oh, you nailed it. You did. Boston in 1737.
Whoa.
is how long ago Boston did that. So
Wow.
we got Boston here. Awesome. So next one here. What animal did St. Patrick legendarily drive out of Ireland?
Oh, snakes. Everybody knows that.
It was snakes. Yeah, it wasn't the comma splices, as I had said earlier.
Well, they look like snakes.
They do. Very good. All right. So next one here. This U.S. city dyes its river green for St. Patrick's Day.
Chicago.
Chicago.
I would have known that one too.
Yeah. I let the snake out of the bag with that one. And last one here for our trivia. What country holds the record for the largest gathering of people dressed as leprechauns?
Ooh.
I'm going to say something like Japan.
It's not Japan.
Okay.
It's going to be slightly more. I mean, it's the U.S. or Ireland. It's one of the two.
Austin?
And then it's got to be the U.S.
Oh,
American.
It's Dublin.
Really?
Dublin, yeah. So
Wow.
Ireland has it. They had 1,000. They had over 1,200 people gathered, all wearing full leprechaun costumes for St. Patrick's Day. According to the Google box, where
I gotta wonder who decided exactly what a leprechaun looks like, how they dress.
Sure.
Who came
Sure.
up with that costume?
Very good, very good. All right, so next one of our shots portion here. Green beer, gimmick or gimme more?
Yeah,
Ooh, gimmick.
Gimmick. Yeah, amen. I'm with both of you. And then Finnegan's Wake, epic troll, or Joyce's last way to say F you to readers everywhere.
Epic troll for me.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Epic troll. Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. We're all in agreement on that one. Yeah. And okay, and so it is my belief that everyone has at least one epic drunk story. So I ask you, panel that's still remaining here, what is your epic drunk story?
Do I have an epic drunk story? I don't think I do.
Yeah, you may have picked the wrong panel. I've got a third party one, but Austin, think about it a little more before I pitch in.
I know epic drunk stories, but I can't share them because I wasn't the drunk.
Oh, I got one of those.
I'm not going to
Share
tell
mine.
you, my wife's epic drunk story or my best friend's epic drunk story.
Right. I mean, you can share them and just not mention who the epic drunk was,
Well, what? Go ahead, Austin.
No.
While Austin's struggling with the ethics of all this.
It's the ethics of it. You don't worry about ethics on St. Patty's Day. This is the wrong time to worry about that. Right?
I have helped people out of hydrangea bushes in the middle of the night.
Uh,
But I think the best one, because honestly, I can only say I've been drunk, and moderately at that, 3 times in my life. And the one that was most extreme, I was actually very sick, and I'm a lightweight. I can't do it. But many years ago, when I was in my 20s or 30s, I lived in a house in London, and my next door neighbor was a very nice man. He was a Turkish Kurd, and he rented rooms in his house. And one of his tenants was this big Irishman. And one day I answered the door, and there was my Turkish neighbor. And the Americans celebrate St. Patrick's Day. It's not done that much in London, or wasn't at the time. Anyways, my Kurdish neighbor, who says, Paddy or whatever his name was, is drunk and I need to get him up the stairs. So the two of us, I've never had to carry an unconscious person before, but the word dead weight is real.
Right.
I was fairly strong at the time, and my neighbor was a big guy, but carrying this just about unconscious Irishman up 3 flights of stairs was the most.
Sure.
You've carried rolls of carpet; those are bad. A
Right.
drunken
Much
Irish
more like a
is
bag of
worse.
flour with arms.
Yeah, right. At least you have something to hold on to. But oh my God, we bumped him up the stairs. He must have been so sore the next day. So that's my one. What's yours, Phil?
Right, very good. That's so funny. Just the carrying people reminded me is that my wife for I forget if it was our anniversary or what, but she made a video and literally a little reel on Instagram, and 45 seconds of it is me carrying her around. And it's usually because she's a lightweight, right? So we go and she has a drink. She's like, oh, and she has high heels, and so there's just all these videos of me carrying her, places. And the real answer is there's way too many stories. I don't know where I would start. We could have a whole Irish, writers drinking whiskey, epic drunk stories, and I could just go on about all of the stupid nonsensical things I've done through the years, and that built up this alcohol tolerance that enables me to host this show while drinking heavily. So, but awesome. So thanks so much, guys. Was there Pepper and Sue, you guys have been hilarious. Thanks so much for contributing through. I've been peeking on them as we go. Any parting thoughts? Any final questions? Anything anyone has before we call it a night?
Don't think so. Oh, does either of you does the name Ken Bruin mean anything to either of you? If not, then I don't have anything else. He happens to be an Irishman who is a writer of crime fiction.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know.
Him at a writers conference, and he was a great man, a lot of fun, and could hold a lot more liquor than I could. He was a real noir writer, a glass of whiskey, cigarette, the whole thing. But
right.
Yeah.
I don't know him.
So look for his
I'll
stuff.
look him up. Yeah.
Ken Bruin.
Okay.
Ken Bruin. Okay, we'll check it out.
I think his biggest name book, I believe, was called Bust.
Bust.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll try it out. So
Okay.
awesome, and thanks so much both. And for jumping on. It was a fun St. Patty's Day. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll I guess we'll call it a night from the Temple Bar in Dublin.
Right at that bar that it looks like we're at. Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much for having us, Bill. It was great fun, and thank you to the audience too for putting up with me.
They love you. Thank you so much for everyone for putting up with me, because I know I'm a pain. But thanks so much, guys. You guys have a great St. Patty's Day, and
Catch you next time.
yes, cheers. Oh, where was my camera?
Cheers.
There's my cheers.
Oh, it's been lovely to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you too, man. Chat to you later.
Mhm.
Good night,
Good
all.
night, everybody.
How does this end? I guess